If there is one thing the TV-obsessed former president of the United States really cares about, it is ratings. And on the first night of the January 6th hearings, at least 20 million people tuned in. Here's another thing the former Apprentice host cares about: casting. And during this show, Republicans refused to cast Eddie Magas, and he is pissed.
In a way, the Republicans should be ashamed of themselves. Unfortunately, a bad decision was made. This committee was a bad decision not to have representation on that committee. That was a very, very foolish decision.
Now, frankly, he should be angry because this might be Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy's biggest blunder since he blurted out on camera that the Benghazi hearings were designed to stop Hillary Clinton from becoming president. Kevin, the man who would be Speaker, somehow thought that giving the committee hours of uninterrupted airtime to paint a coherent story about how Trump and his allies orchestrated a coup was a good idea. That never happens in Congress these days. MAGA Republicans are constantly interrupting hearings, shouting MAGA trigger words like woke, just so that they can get on Fox News. Look at this hearing with the NFL commissioner from earlier today.
I'm a little bit troubled by your embracement of what I'll call left woke anti-American propaganda.
So, Madam Chair, if you want to understand why members on this side of the aisle are frustrated, it's not about holding sexual harassment in the workplace accountable. It is not that. It is about us conducting show trials.
It seems to me the NFL encourages all to speak out. Unless you're Dave Portnoy and not allowed to a game, unless you're Jack Del Rio, you get fined.
Whoa, this is so bad. Well, thankfully, with the January 6th investigation, we have been spared their performative theatrics. For the record, Republicans did have a chance to be part of this process. In fact, Leader McCarthy directed John Katko, the ranking Republican on the House Homeland Security Committee, to come up with a deal. In coming up with the agreement, Katko got Democrats to agree that any subpoenas would have to be jointly agreed upon. The committee would have had an expiration date, and the commission would not have any current politicians serving on the body. That sounds like a pretty good deal for the Republicans, right? Alas, it would not come to pass because McCarthy and Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell killed it. Why? Wait for it. Because they were scared that it would make Trump angry, and you wouldn't like him when he's angry. That brilliant game of strategery gave Republicans a select committee controlled by House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Yep, McCarthy handed control of the committee to Speaker Pelosi because she had the ultimate authority on who would participate. Of the 13 members, 5 were to be chosen in consultation with McCarthy. And when he named 2 members who had participated in the attempt to decertify Biden's win, Jim Banks and Jim Jordan, she said no dice. McCarthy, being a very brilliant political strategist, pulled all of his chosen Republicans, just pulled them all off the panel, leading us to where we are today, with a truly bipartisan committee. For God's sakes, there's a Cheney on it, plus Adam Kinzinger. And we, the American people, are getting a clear, coherent story, free of screamy nonsense, of how Trump, his allies, and congressional Republicans work together to upend our democracy. Thank you, Kevin. With me now, Kurt Bardella, advisor to the DNC and the DCCC. And for those who don't remember, someone who used to work for the guy who used to do the screaming hearings against Democrats, one of them, Darrell Issa, back in the day. So you know how this is supposed to work. You and I have texted about this, but just say the things that we've said privately. How big of an error was this in the end to keep screaming people off the committee? For Kevin.
Kevin McCarthy's loss, Joy, was America's gain in a lot of ways. And in a backwards kind of way, Kevin McCarthy did this country a favor by withholding his Republican-appointed members from this committee. But it was a massive strategic blunder. And as you alluded to, perhaps the biggest blunder of his time as Republican leader, to allow this committee to operate and function in an uninterrupted fashion, to allow them to operate in a way that they can tell the story from start to finish without any of the Republican propaganda, BS nonsense we've grown all too accustomed to seeing during proceedings like this. In many ways, Joy, this is perhaps the most nonpartisan congressional investigation in modern history when you consider the participation of Liz Cheney, of Adam Kinzinger, when you consider that most of the witnesses that we have seen and heard from are actually Republicans, some who to this day would tell you they intend to vote for Donald Trump if he's on the ballot in 2024.
That's right.
They have provided the testimony. This is the least partisan congressional proceeding we'll probably ever see.
100%. In my lifetime, I've never seen, because, I remember the Clinton era where everything was a food fight, all the way through President Obama. Obviously, anything about Hillary Clinton was a dogfight. But in this case, you actually can. I think especially that first hearing where it was in prime time. So people who would normally be watching The Masked Singer or whatever, they watched it. And lots of people did. For a lot of people, for the first time, they were probably actually hearing and seeing the full, unvarnished information about the insurrection and what Trump's part in it was. But let me show you what people have missed. Just for those of you who don't really know about Jim Jordan, here's Jim Jordan. And he's yelling and screaming about something today. And this is for him from Newsmax.
They tell us this is the most solemn, serious, important investigation in the history of our republic. And then the same people are inviting Colbert's comedy crew into the Capitol complex, letting them enter the facilities illegally.
Oh, yes. Courage the cowardly dog. That's what he wants to talk about. Your thoughts?
I mean,
about courage, if you like.
This is a preview of what Republican oversight looks like, by the way. Let's focus on what a late-night sketch comedy show was doing and not domestic terrorists who assaulted police and wanted to hang the sitting vice president of the United States. It just goes to show that Democrats were right, and Speaker Pelosi was right to deny Jim Jordan a place on this committee, to deny the theatrics and the nonsense and the BS that we constantly see. I'm so glad. I was telling this to Ali Vitelli earlier today. I have not missed not hearing the words, "My time is almost up. Because my time is so short, I have to now run on and do this filibuster about things that make no sense at all. I have to cut the witness off." We have been spared all of that and instead allowed. And I really do think, Joy, that this has got to be the blueprint for congressional proceedings going forward, that we need to ditch the nonsense 5-minute volley between Republicans and Democrats.
Yes.
Let's let the facts speak for themselves. Let's let the witnesses that we've asked to be here actually speak to us. There's a novel concept, something we don't usually get to see. This is exactly how it needs to be done, and this committee has done an extraordinary job. And
just again, you made a really good point. Rusty Bowers has said he'd still vote for Trump to this day, even though his family was threatened, and he's still being threatened. William Barr, who trashed him for, set back with his, the wide stance, said he'd vote for him to this day. So this is Republicans going at Republicans. I do want to let you have a crack at this Ron Johnson situation, because I think that's been one of the good revelations here. The courier, Ron Johnson, a.k.a. Senator, who's up for re-election. Here he is running away from Manu Raju of CNN.
How much did you know about what your chief of staff was doing with the alternate slates of abductors? No, you're not. I can see your phone. I can see your screen.
Can you explain what happened there? Why was your chief of staff even offering this to the vice president?
That's a complete non-story. We've issued a statement. And this is a non-story. I don't know what you're even concerned about. Well, this was a staff-to-staff exchange, and I was, basically unaware of it.
I mean, between people like him, who was apparently willing to be a courier for Trump, Mo Brooks, who showed up, at the Ellipse in a bulletproof vest and now is turfed out. Trump dumped him because he wasn't MAGA enough. How important is it, do you think, that we're starting to get to see how much Republican lawmakers, were involved in this plot?
Joey, it's vital that we understand the full totality of what Republican members of Congress were involved in this, which Republican members of Congress were helping with it. Ron Johnson is basically a courier for domestic terrorists. The idea that he didn't know what his chief of staff was doing when it comes to something this delicate, this sensitive, this confidential, is complete nonsense. And I think that one of the things that we're going to see tomorrow at the hearing, as we look at what the Justice Department's role in the effort was under Trump to overturn democracy, I think that we're going to see more revelations about the broadening circle of accomplices that encompassed the Republican Party and members of Congress. We remember in the very first hearing, it turned a lot of heads when there was an allusion to, well, were there members of Congress asking for pardons? What Republicans were doing, helping give tours? I think that we're going to get a lot more information on that. And even though the committee is going to go on a little 2-week break to continue their investigation, I think that the rest of us are going to have a lot to talk about after tomorrow's hearing. And a lot of Republicans are going to be very uncomfortable when they see Manu Raju or Ali Vitelli in the hallways.
Indeed. And I got to give Frank Thorpe credit, too, because apparently he was the one, I think he's the one who said I could see your phone. So giving them credit for some great journalism. Kurt Bardella, thank you very much.